Before we get started, just a very little bit of housekeeping. First, please mute your phones or computers to limit excess noise or distractions. Two, we're really hoping for an interactive session today. So we're gonna use our chat box. Please keep those questions coming. And we have people on our Metis team who are gonna review the chat box, and we're gonna pull all the questions together for our fabulous panelists, and we'll hit them with them at the end. We're also going to be recording the event, like I said, and we'll share them with you at a later time. We're gonna have a few polls embedded as well. So we really, really hope that you'll participate and join us. So let's get started and move to the fun stuff. But before we really get into the weeds, we just wanted to let you know a little bit about why in the world we at Metis decided to convene this panel. And the answer is really simple. It's because we thought that we had a unique opportunity at Metis to connect after-school programs from across the country to share the ideas and resources that you guys are doing. As many of you know, Metis has been securing funding and conducting evaluations for after-school programs with community organizations and school districts for well over 20 years. And we work with districts and states across the country, including, I'm gonna get this right, Georgia, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, and Ohio. We worked with other states as well, but those are the states that we currently work with. And based on all of this experience, we just believe at Metis that we have a unique vantage point. We have an opportunity to learn from all of the programs we evaluate, which include yours, and see all the best practices that you on the ground have been engaging in. And even more than that, how you've pivoted to meet the needs of children and families during COVID. So we decided we had to share that wealth with you. You're all doing amazing work. We have had the chance to observe that work, and we wanted to take the opportunity to bring you together to share best practices and learn from one another. So we're going to take a second and take our first poll so you can tell us a little bit about your program. You can see the poll up on your screen. If you don't mind answering those two questions, we'd love to hear what you have to say. My goodness, all kinds of information. We'll give it one more second for anybody else who wants to answer the poll. I can see we have about 16 people who have responded. All right, well, we're gonna wrap that up. We're gonna show you the results now so you can see what everybody said. Of the programs who are represented here today, 11 or 69% of you are currently fully remote. About 20% of you guys are doing hybrid. One of your programs are all in, and I don't know exactly what other means, but we'll discover that later. And then we were also curious what your role is in your program. And we can see about a quarter of you are program directors. We have some site coordinators and lots of others as well. So we just thought we would give you a chance to see what everybody looks like at this particular juncture. So we're going to stop sharing these results and move on to our next slide, which really talks about our meeting agenda. And the truth is it's really simple. First, we're going to meet our panelists. Then we're going to have that panel discussion. And then we're going to wrap up and give an opportunity for you to ask questions of our panelists. So let's meet our fabulous panelists. We have 3 of them here today, and we've asked each one of them to answer a very specific question about the work that they're doing in their programs throughout the country during the pandemic. Our first panelist, and again, this is only by virtue of alphabetical, that's the order we put them in. Our first panelist is Kenyatta Fundurburk. He's the Executive Director of Community Change in the Bronx in New York City. Then we have Ellen Mays. She's the Director of Child and Youth Development Programs at East End Community Services in Dayton, Ohio. And finally, we have Dr. Donna Van Natten. She's a speaker, author, trainer, and consultant with the Future Foundation in Atlanta, Georgia. I'll tell you a little bit about each of them as we go into each presentation. And first, we're going to start with our very first panelist, Kenyatta. Kenyatta, I'm hoping that you'll take yourself off, allow us to see your video while you're speaking, but I'd just love to introduce you first. Kenyatta joins us from the Bronx, New York, and he's the founder and executive director of Community Change. He's been working with 21st Century Grants since 2009. And he's also worked with Development Without Limits to identify and examine best practices in high school programs across the country. He's won many awards, and he's taught at Lehman College and raised more than $30 million for his programs over the years. If you have questions for Kenyatta while he's speaking, please drop them into the chat. And otherwise, Kenyatta, your question is, how do you engage high school students, and how did that change during COVID? Kenyatta, take it away.
So do you guys see me? Because I'm not doing anything to restrict my video.
No, we see you.
Okay, cool. Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks again, Metis crew, for inviting me to participate in this illustrious panel. You know, when COVID struck back in March, you know, there was a huge pause in our program. I frankly didn't know what to do. Schools were closing down, and you know, folks were out of touch with each other. So, you know, everybody was just like trying to figure out what to do next. And then, you know, I was actually having a conversation with one of my clients who might actually be on the call, Donna, from the Mount Vernon Youth Bureau. She was talking about how the mayor of the city, Sean Patterson, was going to launch a task force. And that task force was focusing on transitioning the city during the era of COVID. And so I said, well, that's such a smart thing to do. I don't need to have all the answers. And I think a lot of times when we are in these positions, in the work that we do, we think that we got to have the answer to everything. I said, I'm going to start a task force. I'm going to call upon professionals from my team, from the field, educators, and see what they have to say about dealing with the critical issue of pivoting and transitioning our programs and all of our operations from operating live to online. First, before I get into that, let me say that our organization, Community Change Incorporated, has been around for a little bit more than 10 years. Our focus is on strategic planning, and we manifest our services in different ways. Not only do we provide strategic planning support to organizations, most of our clients are government agencies, but we also support not-for-profits and institutions of higher education. We also provide curriculum development courses based on our framework, fund development services. Like you said, we've raised, well, now it's more than $35 million in funding, government funding, to support our programs for ourselves and also our clients. But we also do professional development, parent engagement, and youth programs. And we serve, in terms of the youth programs, we serve kindergarten through high school students. And these students are not only in the Bronx, where most of our programs in. We have more than, I would say, we have more than 55 locations now throughout New York State. And we're spread across approximately 7 cities, including several in Westchester County. And needless to say, the multiple boroughs in New York City. And so when you asked me this question, I was like, you know, this is a pretty simple question. But then I said, if I give a simple response, and if anybody answers that question simply, then they're probably not doing, or we're probably not doing the most that we can. When it comes to dealing with young people, particularly high school students, one, you're talking about a complicated entity in and of themselves. And then in this fierce environment, it's a very competitive environment that makes engaging them even more complicated. And then it's even further complicated when you factor in COVID-19 and dealing, you know, trying to engage them during the pandemic. So key to our work has always been our ability to be clear about who we are, our brand, how do we distinguish ourselves from the rest of the people who are providing services to young people, our collective identity, our brand, our niche, and then using that in order to provide services that are relevant to young people, to our target population, in this case, high school students. And relevant meaning being responsive to their needs, interests, and concerns. And being clear, and then designing the programs accordingly. Having clarity about our identity is important. And then from having clarity about our identity and who we are and what we're all about, then it's important to be clear about the partnerships that you have. These are entities that certainly support you in achieving your goals. And there has to be some kind of, you have to be in sync with your partners. You guys have to have a shared philosophy, a shared vision, shared common goals in order to work with each other. And then from that standpoint, then we can go on and talk about getting money, because without the money, you're not going to be able to do any work. And so, like you said, we've been successful in securing government funding throughout New York State. We've secured federal funding from the United States Department of Health and Human Services, 21st Century Learning Centers, advantage after school programs from the Office of Children and Family Services, and also a multitude of local funding. So once you have the money, then and once you have the identity, then the partnerships and the money, then it's a matter of figuring out what kind of programs you're going to roll out and how are you going to engage your target population. Our programs focus on 4 areas: community, careers, culture, and relationships. We think that those are 4 areas that are niche areas. They're unique areas. They're not commonly dealt with in schools. And those are areas that, our competition there may not be a lot of competition in those areas. That's why we call them our niche areas. How much more time do I have?
I think you have another minute or so.
Okay. So those 4 areas: community, careers, culture, and relationships, are the 4 areas of focus for our programs. And so we have models in those 4 areas. And with those models, they focus on integrating inquiry, research, and engagement practices, different things that young people can do that align with their interests. And so even though it's a framework, and some people are critical about having cookie cutter approaches, within that framework, there's a lot of flexibility for creativity. So like I said, we're all over, we're in multiple places in New York City. So the facilitators have the wherewithal to choose exercises and references that align with the students' interests and within their capacity. We encourage this year, because everything is online, we're encouraging people to use online tools. And there's a multitude of online resources that are available to not only provide information to the students, but also to engage them creatively in the different areas of interest. So I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to keep on going and bully the time.
Thank you, Kenyatta. That was super insightful and lots of great information. I know there's going to be questions for you after we get to the end. But for a moment, let's pivot over to our next panelist, Ellen Mays. Please join me in welcoming Ellen from Dayton, Ohio. Ellen serves as the Education Director of Child and Youth Development Programs at East End Community Services in Dayton. She has more than 18 years of teaching and curriculum development and program development in formal and community-based settings throughout the nation, really, as well as some international work. With a background in early childhood education, child psychology, and peace and human rights education, Ellen designs her after-school programs to meet the deep and varied needs of children and families in Dayton. If you have questions for Ellen, drop them in the chat. We'll curate them on our end. And Ellen, your question is, how do you offer social emotional learning and other supports? And how did that change during COVID? Ellen, here we go.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Metis, for this opportunity to share. We're very enthusiastic about our social emotional learning components to our program, and it really is how we wrap everything else around the social emotional learning. I thought I'd start with telling our story about how we got to this point, and then share with you what we've been doing and then how it changed for COVID. So our story began for social emotional learning when we noticed a lot of the students really struggled with regulating their behavior. We had, runners that are running out the door. We had kids that were hiding in their safe space underneath the desks. We had kids on top of the desks too. So we had kids underneath and on top. And we were questioning, why was this behavior occurring? And the typical approach was to send them for an office referral. And we realized there was something else going on, and it was our responsibility to figure out the intervention for those particular kids. So then we realized that social emotional learning begins with us as teachers before it ever hits the students. So we did a lot of research on brain science and learning and executive functioning skills and trauma-informed care approaches, as well as healing-centered approaches as well. And then that, here's a good resource for the boy who was raised by dogs. That'll give some really lots of trauma and lots of resources of working with kids as well. It's a really good book. Now I lost my train of thought. I'll catch it.
You were talking about the different emotional supports that you were offering to kids who were having trouble regulating.
Yes. So then we realized we needed to regulate, thank you, Lori, that we needed to regulate kids in order to educate them beforehand. So regulate before you educate. So we started doing research about different interventions and programs that we could use with our students. So one of them, we started doing dialogue circles, which are circles where kids could share feelings and hold space for each other. And then during those circle time 2, we did zones of regulation. And that is kids report how they're feeling through a variety of 4 different colors. And if they're feeling, in the red zone, then hey, they may need to do some self-regulating activities before they're ready to learn. And if they're in the green zone, their brains are ready to learn and they're ready to go. And if they're in the yellow zone, they're feeling a little bit on the verge of a red zone. So it helps teachers gauge how they can interact with the kids, as well as do those activities for regulating. So what are some of those activities that we've done for regulating? We have a very strong mindfulness program that we do with the students. We start every day with deep breathing activities. Those can be like the square breathing, or what are some other ones? Lots of different breathing activities. Oh, we also use the glitter shaker thing, which is very cool. You shake the glitter and the kids mindfully watch the glitter fall to the bottom. So our kindergarten kids really enjoy that. And the idea is it gets the students in that green zone. So if they're in the red zone, they do this mindfulness activity and deep breathing, and that moves them from the upstairs brain, and they travel all the way down to the downstairs brain where they're ready, or go up to the upstairs brain where they're ready to learn. Also, when we were doing the research, there's another good book called Changeable, and it talks about when a student has a particular behavior, it's one of the reasons is they haven't quite grasped the skill. So one of our responsibilities as teachers is to help them learn that particular skill for self-regulation, or what skill they're particularly missing. We always have 2 teachers in a classroom, and we one of the teachers ends up working with a student that is really struggling regulating their behavior. And that's one of our goals as well. Now, how did it change during COVID? We were very determined not to have our social emotional learning component change at all during COVID. So we have maintained exactly what we're doing, even though we're online. So the day starts with dialogue circles and kids sharing how they're feeling. And then it goes into mindfulness activities. And then it goes into checking on where everybody is in terms of regulation and zones of regulation skills as well. And then a lot of things we do too are strategies to move kids from different zones and for regulating. So some of those strategies are, I've got it on my wall. So one of those strategies is pushing on your hand. So if everyone puts their hand up, everyone put your hand up. Okay, good job. So, and then you're going to push on different, it's like acupuncture. So you're going to push on different parts of it, and that helps regulate. Kids are focusing on the pushing. Another thing is pushing against a wall where there's resistance. So if you can find a wall, you don't have to do it now, but the next time you see a wall, push on the wall, and that offers resistance, which can also be calming. We've done labyrinths. We have a labyrinth that is travelable. It is on the ground, and it's like a 3-circle labyrinth that kids can walk. And that idea of walking over and over and over again is a mindful activity. It's centering to them. And then after they do a labyrinth walk, then they come back to the classroom.
Thank you, Ellen. That is amazing.
Oh, sorry.
Did you get them all?
I think so. I have my little sheet.
That was amazing. Thank you for all those wonderful ideas. I know that we'll I have a feeling people are going to want us to drop those little ideas in the chat box at some point so that we can all take them home with us for our toolkit. So thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to turn to our third but not least panelist. Our final panelist today is Dr. Donna Van Natten. Donna is a speaker, author, trainer, and consultant with the Future Foundation in Atlanta, Georgia. She's been involved in 21st century programs since they came to Georgia in 2002, and she served in every role specific to 21st century, including state monitoring, as a program director, and even as a parent. Donna has been with Future Foundation for almost 15 years. She's a certified teacher and administrator, and she's an expert in nonverbal communications and the founder, president, and CEO of Accountability Measures. Again, if you have questions for Donna, drop them over into the chat. Donna, your question is, how did you retool your program to offer family supports during COVID? Donna?
Lori, hi everybody. Yeah, thank you, Metis. Aren't they just gems? I'll have to tell you, I was in New York, you know, when we used to travel back in the day, and I was on down by the Bull and everything, and I saw the Metis sign. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know those people in that building. I didn't go in though, you know, I carried on as a tourist. But anyhow, yeah, we're in Fulton County, and as a nonprofit, we partner with several of our programs with Fulton County schools. So we are in schools, and we have our own site as well. And we offer programming to kids 7th grade through 12th grade. So we're middle and high school programs across the board. And so, as you know, parents, and for 21st century parents, goal 3, sometimes it's hard to get them to come to stuff, right? We try to tag on to school events. We reach out, we offer incentives. And in traditional formatting, we offered, monthly workshops. And sometimes we'd see parents if they would pick up their kids, but it's always a challenge. And so you can imagine when COVID hit and it threw everything into a spin, we quickly were able to take advantage as the school shut down. Fortunately, Future Foundation, we have our own transportation. We have several vans, multi-seat passenger vans. And one of the first needs that came up was food assistance. And so we were able to gather partners and, from local churches to Fulton County food banks, to SMRTY, which is USDA related partner. And we put together meals for the families, and we were delivering meals to the homes for our kids 3 times a week. And that was kind of twofold. Not only did it help families with food, assistance, but it also enabled us to check on the families, because as we know, when everything shut down, our school is our biggest, watch the kids, if you will, and see what's going on. We could see what was going on and where needs continued. So we also put out a needs assessment for what did families need. And a couple of things that quickly emerged, and some of you may know this, is technology. And so a second thing that we did is we provided hotspots and Chromebooks for kids in homes. Because while Fulton County provides Chromebooks to kids, when school ends, the Chromebooks go back and homework stops. Chromebooks don't always work, and then you see kids completely disengaged. So we were able to do that and help with the digital divide by providing hotspots. Another thing that we did, more on a limited basis though, is we provided some rental assistance. So some of our families would not be evicted, which tragic, but true, even though, you want everybody to stay, but, it's not always the case for families that transition every month or so. And a simple thing that we did was provide cleaning supplies. You and I on the call may be able to afford things like that, or if you could find them, but we quickly realized that these vital cleaning supplies made a difference so that our families would be safe at the core level. Another thing that we did was we took a case management approach, meaning we started to call the families every day and every week and say, what do you need? And answering that question all the time of what do you need was very different. At that time, they didn't need homework assistance. They need the water bill paid. So, it's hard to convince them to do something else when the water needs to be paid. And we did apply and receive PPP money, which was beneficial, as many of you probably know about as a nonprofit, that helped us bridge some of these gaps. The other thing that we had during the summer is we had a dedicated Facebook and social media platform for our parents and families, and we highly incentivized them. for them attending and their kids attending, we sent them boxes, and they were themed boxes, and they would include, for example, like 4th of July, they had hot dogs and chips, drinks, and they received these if their kids showed up and if they attended a workshop. So we found these were really well received. And of course, we asked the families to take pictures while it was, while they were, celebrating the event. We had a movie night theme. So we had about 6 themed entertainment in a boxes, if you will, that we would then, using our transportation, send out to the families. And those were really well received because they were really nicely done. And everybody could partake in it. So there were, water balloons for the kids, and there were, food for the families. So, and I, like Ellen said, some of the things that we do is we have to find out how the kids are doing. And we also have a community circle that we start every day with our kids. And we have the color system as well, because, they're not going to go anywhere else if there's some violence going on in the home, or they're being hurt or whatever. They're just completely disengaged, and like we've had our suicide, attempt cases, like some of you can relate to. So we're really working off of, and those of you in education, we're down at Maslow right now. We're not looking for self-efficacy. We're looking for, are you warm at night? Do you have electricity? So as far as things that we specifically did, I would say meals, technology, cleaning, housing, checking in, and needs assessment. And one of the vital things is that we were able to go out to the kids using our own transportation and things like that. So.
Thank you, Donna. That is amazing information. I've been trying not to look at the chat box, but there's all kinds of interesting things that are coming in, which is perfect timing because it's question and answer time. So thank you to all of our 3 panelists. I've learned a great deal. I hope everybody else has as well. But now that all 3 of you has had a chance to talk, we're hoping to ask our panelists some questions directly from our participants. So please, participants, continue to post them in the chat and we'll take it from there. But for the moment, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Dawn Boyer, who will share some of the questions. Dawn?
Hi, everybody. So I've been monitoring the chat box, and we have a couple of questions here. For Kenyatta, what online tools work best with your high school students? Do you have any particular recommendations?
Kenyatta, you're on mute.
Can you guys hear me now?
Sure
Yeah.
can.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen. Am I sharing my screen now?
I don't think you can do that during our.
Oh crap. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop inside of the chat box a couple of links from our website.
Okay.
Our website is www.communitychangeinc.com. And what we did is, one of the things that we do to support our staff members, one, we ask our teachers, we pay them, we give them time so that they can, do research to identify online tools that are aligned with the students' interests. Because again, we have a lot of students that we serve throughout the state of New York. They have varying interests, and we have a wide range of teachers that are working with us. They also have varying interests and skill sets. So we give them the wherewithal to do research. We pay them to do research to identify online tools that they can use to engage their students. They know who their students are. They're supposed to sort of get a sense of get the pulse of the students to find out what they like, especially in the first phase of all of our programs. So we pay the teachers to do that. So at www.communitychangeinc.com, if you scroll all the way down, there's a building that says resources. And that building, when you click on that building, it's a list of different websites and links that you can go to in order to see some online tools to engage the students. Something else that another online tool that I like, is probably included within that link that I just posted in the chat, is Trivia Maker, triviamaker.com. It's a really cool website. You got to subscribe to it. And you could customize all kind of games like Jeopardy, Family Feud, Wheel of Fortune. They have some other cool games there, but those games are really good because when you're giving information to the students, if they know that after they cover the information, there's some kind of a competitive game that they're going to participate in, a team game, that makes the information that they're getting during exploration more relevant. So those are two resources that I'm sharing that I would encourage you to use to effectively engage your students. One, the resource from our website that has a list of all kind of resources for references and student engagement. And then the other one is triviamaker.com.
Thanks, Kenyatta.
Awesome, thank you. Ellen, the next question was for you. How did you decide on your SEL curriculum?
Research.
Does anyone have any understanding, Ellen?
Can you hear me?
Can you mute and unmute just real quick and see if that helps?
Hello?
Mm-mm.
Why don't we go to our next question and then we'll come back to Ellen.
Okay, sounds good. So for Dr. Donna, were all of the services that you described providing to the parents, did those all come from the PPP funds?
No, we have some unrestricted funds. We have obviously 21st Century and some other state and federal funding, but we also have some unrestricted funding. And so we did tap into that, not just PPP. And our foundation was started by Sharif Rahim, and some of you may know, he's a basketball player. And they were raised in Fulton County, his family, and he invested 20 years ago, $1 million into Future Foundation. So that was our seed money. Not that we have that seed money, but it got us going in the sense of the people that were raised in Fulton County and came back to make a difference. And if you don't know anything about Fulton County, they've been in the news a lot for Georgia with the election. And we're by the airport. And, like many of the schools that you serve or the communities that you serve, it's very economically challenged. And so, you learn to partner with the people. And Sharif's sister, Kadera, actually ran the organization for 17 years. And she's a mover shaker. And so, she would put the ask out and money would come in. And some of you, on the call have the ability to do that, whether it's, at a big box store or it's a church or it's somebody on your board. And, you get resourceful that way. But usually, and you guys know this, when you are asking for such things as food and housing and a very specific ask, people are usually more than, open to share. We're all willing to bring cleaning supplies kind of thing. And, we have extra in our homes, or we're like, what's that when we go? And so I think if you know your specific ask versus could you just help us, people are willing to step up. So yes, we had PPP, but we also had unrestricted funds that we could help out with.
Great, thank you, Dr. Donna. Ellen, maybe we can try you again. See how that's going. Darn it, thought it would be better. Well, maybe you could type it into the chat. I'm just curious how you, maybe you could tell us which curriculum you use, if there is a particular one that you use. I know that there are a lot of things out there, and it sounds like you did a lot of research. So I'm very curious as to how you were able to narrow it down to what you ultimately ended up with. We had another question, which was for all of the panelists. To what extent did your state education departments support your pivoting efforts during COVID? Like specifically, I'm guessing if you had like a 21st century program.
I'll go first. We use 21st century money, and Georgia DOE, or Godot as it's called, extremely supportive because, and I think for the most part, our contacts were very concerned about who is going to stop operating programs, and let's face it, these are public taxpayer dollars and a lot of people benefit from employment. And so we were one of the few programs, they gave us the opportunity if we wanted to shut down, we could, no harm, no foul. And of course, all number requirements, from the number of days, the number of kids served, meeting our milestones, objectives, all of that was suspended. So we were not penalized, and that was very beneficial. And the state was extremely receptive that we were one of the few, particularly nonprofits, that opted to stay open and instantly shift to family and student support beyond, homework and tutoring and the traditional way that we offered it after school time. And Georgia, I'm not sure how other states, we've actually applied for a in-school time waiver. It has not yet been approved, but we understand during COVID times, we want to be able to provide something that might happen at 12:30 in the afternoon, because that's going to meet the kid and the family best. So while we're waiting on that, we're very hopeful. And we know some other programs that I'm involved with in Georgia, it would be a game changer, particularly for the high school, that operates off of different kind of hours anyway. And so, yeah, so our state was extremely supportive of us and shared whatever they could. And we actually had a online state meeting, and we're featured as, hey, you're doing something great, they're in Atlanta. So we were really proud of that.
Thanks.
Yeah, the New York State Education Department has also been amazing, just like Georgia. They lowered the expectation as far as folks' contractual obligation. So that eliminated the concern that many folks had as far as budget cuts for fiscal year ending 2020. The other thing the state education department did was they allowed for they didn't do this in the past. They allowed for funds to carry over because when the schools shut down in March, there wasn't any more field trips, and you wasn't spending as much money on supplies, and you wasn't going to have as much personnel. So they allowed for the funds to carry over into fiscal year ended 2021, which creates an interesting situation because you're still in a pandemic and you're still not operating at 100% capacity, but you have probably 125% funding. So that creates the opportunity for you to think creatively about how do you use the funds to address the needs of the community and any strategic issues that you may have as an organization, and providing services to your target population. The State Education Department of New York is also, they actually received approval from the federal government to provide in-school services for those organizations that did not have that offering in the past. So the State Education Department, I got to say, is they've been really flexible and supportive. They've encouraged people to keep the operations going, to keep people employed, to think creatively about ways of compensating people to address the poverty issue. And we've taken advantage of that. We've given people pay increases when opportunity, allowed, and across the board. And we also hired young people to work in our program. When you hire young people working in your program, of course, they're not able to be counted as youth participants. So it was a competitive situation where we allowed our school partners, the principals, to cherry pick the students, two per school, to get the job working with us. And then their job was to have to lead a club. So they were, and that helped us to address the need to target more students, because we didn't relax just because the state lowered the criteria for a funding cut. We took that as an opportunity to step it up and be more responsive to the needs that our folks had. So yeah, we hired a bunch of students to work in our program, and then they recruited students, and they had a proctor that worked with the students inside of the classroom, the virtual classroom, and it was a remarkable experience. But all of that was made possible because the state had some flexibility with the funding.
Wow.
Thank you, Kenyatta. That's
That is
huge.
awesome.
It sounds like, Ellen, I just want to say thank you to Donna and Kenyatta for answering those questions. Ellen did write something in the box. I'll read it aloud to you. She said, we have now been researching healing-centered engagement, which focuses on what we are doing to promote healing in the classroom. They do yoga, movement activities, peer mentoring across all grade levels, and provide space to feel your feelings, and that all feelings are valid and important. So we wanted to put that out there.
One other thing.
Oh,
I'm
yes?
sorry, Lori. She had written a chat earlier with the specific programs that they use, including the Mind Up curriculum, and zones of regulation. So those are in the chat if you guys wanted to take a look at those and maybe jot them down if you were interested in finding out more about them.
Thanks, Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another resource that I'd like to suggest. One of the ways you asked about how do we engage students. So each session that we have in terms of engaging students is structured in 6 stages. So first there's a welcome, And then there's an icebreaker. The work was just a basic introduction. Then there's an icebreaker. And then from the icebreaker, the students engage in an exploration exercise. They look at the information, the reference, in order to get facts or some information that answers a critical question that they're focusing on for the day. And then the students have to be engaged in an exploration exercise that allows them to share creatively or apply creatively what they learned from the exploration exercise. Then there's a review and a reflection. One of our team members, Jim, he identified, Jim, if you could post in the chat, if you're still with us, the mood meter, and that's a very good tool that you can use in order to welcome the students into your session. I think he posted it earlier in the chat, but if he has it, then yeah, if you don't mind, Jim, posting the mood meter, and that's a social emotional developmental tool in order to transition the students from wherever they was participating in into your classroom, into your virtual classroom. And that's another thing that's important in terms of being able to provide a variety, a creative variety with no repetition of online tools to engage the students, because a lot of folks complain about the students being zoomed out or tired of virtual meetings. And I maintain that it's not the virtual nature of the education that's the problem. It's the application or the lack of applying a variety of online tools, because these same kids, they will spend hours online in PlayStation and playing PlayStation.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, Kenyatta. I think we just need to be careful that we're cognizant of time, but those ideas are amazing.
Yeah, you got the point.
And I just want to make sure that we have a chance to wrap things up. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
That's awesome. And I see that Jim did post that on the group, so thank you for that. First of all, I want to thank everyone for those amazing questions and answers. Before we move to our end stuff, I'd like to have one more question in our next poll break, which is, what would you like to know more and what would you like to know more about? So if you could answer any other after-school topics that you would like to learn about in perhaps future webinars. So we'll just give that about 30 seconds and then we'll look at our results. Okay, we're going to end our polling and show our results. And as you can see, wow, the big winners today are social emotional learning and family engagement supports, which I actually call the win because people only want more of things that they really, really like. So it sounds like these are the kinds of things that are also needed. Things also related to project-based learning, professional development, everybody's favorite, evaluation, community partnerships. So we have all kinds of interesting things, and we're really hopeful that we'll have these kinds of activities in the future. One thing I just wanted to point out is that you have heard a lot of me talking today, but before we wrap up, I would like to introduce you to the rest of the Metis After School team. This fearless team evaluates programs like yours every day, and I would like to take a moment to thank everybody, including Marilyn, Donna, Don, Narajana, and Matt. Everybody was involved in the entire process. The very last thing I'd like to do today is to invite you to do 3 more little things. One is share this with others. As soon as we get this link up and running, we'll make sure it gets sent out or put on our Metis website. Hopefully you find these tools and these ideas really valuable, and we encourage you to share them with others because, like I said, we like to share the wealth. We also encourage you to reach out to us with questions. You can reach out to me. My email address is on there, or any of our Metis colleagues. And finally, we're hoping you can tell us what you think about our very first ever webinar. So you can see the link on your screen, but also we're going to drop it into the chat for a very quick and dirty survey so you can tell us what you think. And that's all we have, everybody. Thanks again to everyone, in particular, our fabulous, amazing panelists. It's been a pleasure to talk to all of you today, and we look forward to many future Metis Connects events. Be well, everyone. Goodbye.